Hey guys, what's going on? It's Andrew from AR Media. In tonight's video, I want to go over my top 10 movies of 2018. So the year is coming to an end, and I wanted to do my annual top 10 movies of the year. So let's get straight into it with number 10, and that is going to be mid-90s. So mid-90s was Jonah Hill's directorial and written debut, and I must say I was not disappointed at all with this movie. Now, as someone who grew up in the 90s, I definitely related to this movie a lot, and as a skateboarder who wasn't all that good at skateboarding itself, but really like the culture, I definitely meshed with this movie. And I will say what I really enjoyed about this movie and why I recommend it is it's just a slice of life kind of movie. It feels like something that was not really written or not staged. It feels like it was something real that you found from the 90s and that was published today. And the way it was shot also really replicates the 90s perfectly with that 16mm film and the 4:3 aspect ratio. I think Jonah Hill did a great job, and I think all the actors are just perfectly genuine in this role, and it's a great coming of age movie. In the number 9 spot, we have Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built. Now, I know a lot of people may not agree with me putting this on the list at all. This is a very brutal movie, but those who know Lars von Trier know that he does not make movies to make you happy. For the most part, he's either making you depressed or making you shocking or revolted. And this is definitely going to be more in the revolt category. So this movie stars Matt Dillon as a serial killer and follows him over a 12-year span and shows different incidents of his killings. And I will say straight up that this movie is very brutal for those who are at all sensitive to material like that. Do not go see that. But for someone like me who is not really sensitive to it, I thought this movie was a masterpiece in many ways. I do think there were a couple of negatives about it, but I think the way it looked into a serial killer's mind was great, and I think Matt Dillon's performance was amazing. So I had to put it on my list. Just watched it last week, the number 9 spot. Next up, we have a favorite of the channel, and that is Ready Player One. Now, right when I saw this in theaters, I knew this was going to make my top 10 list for multiple reasons. The great story, the great special effects, and all the nostalgia references. I mean, there were so many awesome movie references and video game references sprinkled throughout that were so much fun, and the story itself was really good. And being a fan of VR myself, I just really enjoyed the story. It shows really what maybe we could show in the future when it comes to technology of the haptic suits. Now, hopefully we don't get into a dystopian future like that, but I had a good time with this movie and recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it, that's a fan at all of video games or movies, or is just looking for a good adventure story. Next up in the number 7 spot, we have Searching. Now, this one really surprised me when I saw it in theaters. I did not expect too much from it, and I walked out pretty amazed. Now, this is one that takes place where it's all taking place inside a computer or through a computer, similar to the way Unfriended is, but I will say this is done in a much fresher way, and from the first 3-minute intro, you can see that directly. Now, in the first 3 minutes, it's basically a computer from when it's bought to when you meet the characters, and you basically see their whole life through calendar reminders, through emails, through pictures, and nowadays that really is how things are technologically archived. So it was just a great, really marketing tactic from Google, and this was actually made by some people that used to work at Google, so it does not surprise me. But I will tell you, from the first 3 minutes, you will be extremely entertained, and just from a technical standpoint, this movie really stood out, and this mystery had me guessing the whole time. John Chow's performance was great, and he's missing his daughter. His daughter gets kidnapped. You will be guessing who it is, who's the culprit, and all in all, a great thrill ride and just a great movie overall. Next up, at number 6, we have First Reformed. Now, this is Paul Schrader's outing. Now, you probably know him from Taxi Driver, and this movie really blew me away. Now, Ethan Hawke's performance, as well as Amanda Seyfried, really captivated me and really showed what they can do on screen. Now, this is an indie, low-budget movie that's a very slow-burn thriller. I would not classify it as horror, although some people do. That has to do with the environmental crisis, it has to do with priests, and it has to do with really morals and ethics and love. And there are a lot of things in this movie. And this is a deep, slow burn movie that I would not recommend to everybody. But if you like movies like The Witch, then I think this is right up your alley. Or some other A24 movies, then you may want to check this out. Next up in 5th place, we have A Quiet Place. Now, you guys know that was a favorite on the channel with the Dolby Atmos and the picture quality on the 4K, but the movie itself was also a favorite of mine. I thought the atmosphere was great, them not being able to make any noise, these creatures that were unknown, but you still got enough of sight of them to be intrigued. I really like what John Krasinski did with this movie. I think he allowed you just to see enough to be intrigued, and then by the end to see enough to really get some monster action in. I think this was a really good movie. It was a great mix of thriller and horror, and it was a good little bit of suspense in there as well. Emily Blunt had a great performance as well, and the kids did not let me down either. Highly recommended movie, and definitely worth the number 5 spot. Number 4 is Avengers Infinity War. This one kind of speaks for itself because I think this was the superhero epic that we all were waiting for, and it completely delivered. I sat with my jaw on the floor at the end of that movie in the theater on opening night, and I loved the theater experience, and I loved it even more watching it at home in 4K. I think the movie was thrilling from beginning to end. I don't think there were any dull points in it. Clearly, there was a ton of characters in it, a ton of development in it, and I cannot wait for Avengers Endgame. Clearly deserving of the number 4 spot, if not higher. In 3rd place, we have Bradley Cooper's directorial debut, A Star is Born. Now, I was blown away by this movie, and I went into it with pretty moderate expectations, because I have to say, I saw the critics really loved it, but I wasn't really expecting me to love it. I wasn't really expecting the story to mesh or to hit home at all, and I think the story was excellent, and the way Bradley Cooper acted and directed was perfect. Lady Gaga's performance was amazing, as well as the singing on both parts, and the love story they have is great. Now, I know this is the 4th time they're telling this story, so it's nothing new, but I feel like it's super prevalent to today and super relevant to all the things that have been happening this year. Well, I don't want to go into any spoilers, but I think the movie hits very close to home in a lot of real-world situations, and I think it was done beautifully. In 2nd place, we have Annihilation. Now, this was a favorite sci-fi of mine, and this is going to go down as a sci-fi classic in my mind. I think Natalie Portman's performance in this was great, but what I loved about this was the mixture of Lovecraftian elements with some sci-fi. There was a lot of horror elements, but they kept the sci-fi and horror elements really perfect 50-50 and kept you wondering the whole time what was going on in the shimmer, and it was one of my favorites of the year by far. The visuals were fantastic, the performances were great, and some of the set pieces were some of the most beautiful set pieces I've seen in a frame in any movie ever, specifically that pool scene. And number 1 on my list has to go to Hereditary. Now, I'm sure you guys saw this coming as a huge horror buff, but this one really won it for me. Now, this is a slow burn horror, so don't expect crazy amounts of jump scares or anything like that, but this will instill a sense of dread in you that you have not felt in a long time, and the performances in this were really top notch by Toni Collette and really the whole cast. Now, this may not have the jump scares, but I will tell you, you will see some things in the frame that you did not notice that will freak you out and will have you leaving the lights on way later than you should at night and being pretty scared to turn them off. I thought this was one of the best movies of the year and is my personal favorite of the year for both story, acting, direction, and I cannot wait to see what he has in store next for us. So anyway, guys, these were my top 10 movies of the year. I know I cannot include them all, and I know I'm sure I am missing some, so I want to know down below what your guys' top 10 movies of the year were. This was a great year for movies with tons of great entries, so narrowing down to just 10 was very difficult, but I had to share with you guys, and I'm going to put links in the description for all these movies on 4K if they're available, and if not, I'll put a link to the pre-order. Buying it with those links gives me a small kickback that helps me buy more 4Ks to put more videos out and more reviews to review for you. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a happy new year. I hope you had a happy holidays, and I'll see you guys in the next one.